This is it. Another amazing episode of the Bible in 1 year with the preacher's husband. Welcome to my Hawaiian adobe. Okay, not. Well, anyway, today we're talking about chapter 25 and 26 in Genesis. And it starts out talking about Abraham's other wife and how he had several children with this other lady after Sarah had died. And then Abraham dies, and guess what? He had a burial cave because he purchased one for Sarah and for his family long term. He planned ahead. He planned for that. It all happened. Everything worked out nicely. And then we learn about Ishmael's family records. And then Esau and Jacob are born to Isaac and Rebekah. So then we have the story of Esau and Jacob. Well, these two were twins. As it turns out, Rebekah had some issues having babies too, just like Sarah did, Sarah and Abraham. So they were married when Isaac was 40 years old. And for 20 years, they did not have any children at all. None. They couldn't have kids. Until one day, Isaac prayed to God and said, God, let us have some kiddos. And guess what? God said, done. You're going to have twins. So twins it was. But there were some issues with this all during the pregnancy. Rebekah knew that these two were fighting amongst themselves, even within the womb. And when they were born, sure enough, Esau was born first, and he came out red and hairy. And then Jacob came right behind him, holding on to his foot, coming out the other side. And God even said that one of these is going to rule the other. The young one would rule the other from the start. And that's kind of what happened. Esau, he was a man's man. He was a scruffy, outdoorsy type of guy. He was a hunter, and he was the running, jumping, climbing trees kind of guy. And then you had Jacob. He was kind of the opposite. He was the smart, the calculating, stay at home and cook, hang out with mom kind of guy. And if there were video games, then he would probably be the video game guy, just sitting around playing video games all day. But he was super smart. And one day Esau comes in after being out on a hunt, and he was exhausted and beaten up and about half ready to die. And Jacob convinces him to give over his birthright for an extra portion of stew that he had cooked. And then the troubles only get bigger from there. Later on in the story, we find out that there will be some stolen blessings and other things that happen with this. So this saga between Esau and Jacob will be continued tomorrow. So that moves us on to chapter 26, where Isaac pulls off what I like to call the pointless lie. Now, we heard before that Abraham twice, on two different occasions, went to a town and described his wife Sarah as being his sister. First time it was to Pharaoh, and that was kind of had a point to it, because Pharaoh was known for taking the wives of men and killing the men and just keeping the wife for themselves. So in order to keep himself from being killed by Pharaoh, he claimed that Sarah was his sister, which wasn't a lie. He did not lie, because Sarah actually technically was a sister to him, just not with the same parents, not with the same parent. It was like a half sister. So that kind of backfired though, because Pharaoh thought, well, she's beautiful anyway, and they're not. That's his sister. That's not really his wife. I'll take her as my wife. So he took her as his wife, and then a plague came down on Pharaoh. And that's when he realized that he had been snookered by Abraham. Well, then Abraham later on does the same thing to Abimelech. But Abimelech had a little higher moral standard. And Abimelech actually believed in God. He actually took heed to what he heard God telling him. He paid attention to God's visions. And in a dream, God basically told Abimelech, you're fixing to bring something really bad down on yourself with this guy, this lady. This is not Abraham's sister. This is his wife. So he goes to Abraham and straightens things out and figures it out. Later on, they become, allies. Well, Isaac, for some strange reason, goes here to Abimelech's home and tells Abimelech the same thing. Tells him that Rebekah's my sister. And Abimelech's wasn't just born yesterday. He knows that something's up. Something's up with this. It just seemed a little sketchy from the start. And it all comes to fruition when he sees Isaac caressing Rebekah, and then he immediately calls him in there and says, listen, what have you done here? What have you told? And he says, surely she is your wife, because I saw you caressing her out there. What have you done to us? One of the people here might have well slept with her, and you would have brought guilt upon this, or a plague from God on them because of this pointless lie. There was no reason for it, because Abimelech was not a bitter, scoundrelous enemy. He actually had some values, and that shouldn't have been a fear of Isaac's at that time, but it was. And he tried to pull off the same deception, like father, like son, but it was pointless, really, to me. There was no reason for it at this point in time. That had passed, especially with Abimelech. He has already proven that he's not that kind of guy. Then there are conflicts over wells that they're digging around Abimelech's area. The guys around there are fighting over wells, and they name these wells things like Eske, which means argument, or Sitna, which means hostility. But later on, they come to terms with Abimelech, and Abimelech comes to him and says, look, let's have a treaty. They have a feast on it, and the next day the treaty exists. They have peace between the two areas, and they lived happily together. And then we learn about Esau, how he started to marry a little weird like. He was 40 years old, and he took his wives, Judith, daughter of Beri and the Hittite, and Basemath, daughter of Elon the Hittite, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. So Isaac and Rebekah's son Esau began to make Isaac and Rebekah's life miserable and bitter. And a lot of this has to do with playing favorites, and how Isaac and Rebekah, as parents, I'm blaming them. It's the parents' fault. I'm blaming them on this one. So tomorrow we're going to learn a little more about that. We're going to go through chapter 27, 28, and 29 of Genesis tomorrow. I hope this has touched you. If it has, please click that like button, the share button, the subscribe button, and the little jingle bell so you can get notified the next time I upload a video. And I hope to see you tomorrow.